I was going.
I know.
I was going. I was there. I was in the groove.
You were rocking it.
I hope you all were too, because that's a bad jam right there.
It is a good jam. That jam is brought to you by Side Hustle, the band. Check them out at sidehustletheband.com. This is Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie.
Tis. Unexpected that.
Oh, shit. Hey, stop it.
No, keep it going.
No, stop.
Friday dance party on Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie.
Oh, seriously, this is happening. Stinky. Oh my gosh.
Damn, I'm stinky, he said.
Listen, I can't. Today has been one of those days. It's happening. It's like everything's going wrong. I just got a brand new light for the show. It's out.
This brings us to our day. It's
there. The light is back on.
Nice.
Right. And then it just went out a second ago.
I don't know what to tell you. Strange things are afoot at the Circle K. As Keanu once said to us. Happy Friday, all of you lovely people who are watching, who are all related to David Stringer. All of you. Look at you. Welcome to the Toilet Paper Fortune Cookie Podcast, Unorthodox Wisdom from Unexpected Reality. Dave, remind him what that means.
Well, if we could figure out what that means, we would tell you. No, just kidding. As soon as we figure it out, look, this is a podcast that seeks to explore the wonderful aspects of entrepreneurship and business and the arts and how all that comes together in a gooey mess. And the essence of this podcast is to share our experiences that might come across as maybe some wisdom to some folks. I don't know, I'm hoping. And share our experiences, talk about the different aspects of how we're moving forward. And I think that's really what our show today is going to be about.
Indeed.
And, share those wisdom of nuggets, those nuggets of wisdom.
Yeah, Dave and I are going to get to what's going to be changing here. We have big plans. Well, Dave is in charge of all the things where he says, you know how many people are watching and listening and looking and downloading and this thing and that? And I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about. And then he says, well, people are watching our show. I'm like, that's fantastic. And more people are listening to our show. That's fantastic. I don't know. I didn't even know that on my photography website that there was a little thing that said like diagnostics or whatever. And it tells you like all the people who visit. No idea. But today we're going back to our roots. You get just Dave and me today. That's who you get. You get us. You get the guys who 2 months ago, which now seems like I don't know, 20 years ago.
Yeah, right.
Dave said to me when he was trying to figure out how I could best find an income, being an unemployed performer and photographer and teacher, and he helped me and we talked and he said we should start a podcast. So we did. And my mom always said there are two kinds of people who do and people who don't. And Dave Stringer is a person who does. And I like to think of myself as a person who does. So together we did, and it's been an incredible learning process, and also given what has transpired over the last 7 or 8 weeks since it was a little nugget, has been amazing. And that's one of the things that Dave and I are going to concentrate on today, about how much things have changed over the last 6 to 7 weeks, and it is certainly extraordinary.
It is. So today's episode is focus group. So or maybe it's the other way around. Maybe it's focus group. So yeah, we're gonna give some opportunity to talk about the different worlds that are happening right now. So in our rehearsal and discussions about what do we talk about in this show, it was quite clear that Matt and I are living in kind of two different worlds. New York is still very closed. South Carolina is very open, and it's almost like it didn't happen here in South Carolina. Yes, we see people walking around with masks. Yes, there are precautions being taken. But man, the traffic to get home was the worst it's been in 8 weeks. So Yeah, so we're going to talk about the different worlds, and then we want to talk to the audience tonight about, are you ready to transition with us to a legitimate podcast? So what we mean by that is we went into this with the idea that let's talk about what's going on in the world. Let's kind of pull people in. Let's interview them. And let's see if we can make something out of this into a podcast that, yes, because we're entrepreneurs, this guy and I, we want to make a little bit of money out of this. We don't want to just do this because we think it's fun. I do think it's fun, but let's make some money while we're doing this. So there's a way to monetize podcasts like this. And we're just wondering if our audience is willing to go along with us to monetize our podcast. So those are our big topics tonight. But I think first, to kind of kick us off here, I think we need a story.
I don't know. Apparently, Ryan Sanderson thinks I talk too much. So, if I'm not mistaken, podcasts are simply like hours and hours of people talking.
Talking, right?
If that is antithetical to what we're trying to do, then Dave, please tell me, and I'll just sit here and look at you. I will just sit here.
Ryan's just playing with you. God, my light keeps going off. I'm gonna send this back.
It just shuts off?
Yeah, it just strange. Yeah. Anyway, not that anybody wants to see me anyway, but
not true. I'll just keep talking and you just look pretty. How's that?
Oh, we're in trouble now.
Yeah, so I have a fun story to tell, and it's a little bit creepy and it's kind of spooky, and then we'll get into the meat of the thing. But I just thought about this the other day. I don't know why. So when I was, a little kid, when Bob Ballard discovered the Titanic in 1985, he found the Titanic at the bottom of the ocean. I was 14 years old, and I was just so transfixed. And I just got so into the story, and it was just I read everything. There wasn't much as far as documentaries and stuff like that back then. But then in 1997, there was the announcement that Titanic was going to open on Broadway, a Broadway musical of Titanic. And my roommate at the time, Corey English, one of my dear friends, he was like, "Dude, with all of your fascination with the Titanic, you're going to be in this show." And I was like, "Oh my God, I wish." A year later, through a long series of events, and that's another fun story about auditioning, which if we have a whole little section about that sometime, my audition for my first Broadway show. I ended up getting it. It was a dream come true. I ended up making my Broadway debut in Titanic the musical. It was insane. About a year later, they sent out, the national tour was out, and for those of us who had been on the Broadway show that had since closed, they asked a bunch of us if we wanted to go on tour. On Broadway, I was what was called a swing, which meant I jumped in for a lot of different characters. I covered 8 different characters in the show. It was a mind effort, but it was so much fun when you were younger because you played a different role every night. On tour, I played the role of a guy named Charles Valentine Clark. The Broadway show consisted of nothing but actual characters. It wasn't Jack and Rose. It was all people who were actually on the Titanic. Charles Valentine Clark was a second-class reporter. He was a sports reporter moving to America with his first-class girlfriend. They were the closest thing to Jack and Rose on the actual Titanic. For almost a year, I played Charles Valentine Clark. I did so much research on the guy. There's not a lot to find out about him. He was from Philadelphia. Because he was second class, there wasn't a lot to know about him. Cut to 2002, 2.5 years after I'm done doing Titanic. I had always had these crazy dreams about what it would have been like to be on the Titanic. And then I got to do it every night and got to make believe, thank God, walk into the North Atlantic and die on the Titanic every night. It was, if you let yourself go mentally and emotionally into the show, it was some heavy shit doing that show every night. It really was, to think about the 1,500 people who actually died. 2002, my dear sweet mother, was competing in what's called the U.S. Transplant Games, which is kind of like, for anybody who's ever had a transplant, it's an extraordinary event. And it was in Orlando at Disney. And right next to it at some expo was the Titanic exhibit, the floating Titanic exhibit that went around the world and around the country. And my mom was like, "Well, we have to go." Because I was like, please, 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 please. So we go to the Titanic exhibit. And here's where it gets weird. So at the beginning of the tour of the whole thing, this woman comes out dressed as Madeline Astor, who was John Jacob Astor's teenage mistress. And she starts telling us, I'm going to take you on a tour of all things Titanic. And she starts going through the whole thing. And she said, everyone here, have your passenger tickets and all this stuff. We walk through the whole exhibit. We get to the end. And I had been asking questions the whole time. And this girl was just like, how do you know so much about the Titanic? And I said, well, actually, I did the Broadway show. Oh, that's exciting. That's fun. At the end of the exhibit, there's a big wall. And the wall, which is set up to look sort of like the Vietnam Veterans Memorial Wall, was all the names of the 2,200 people who were on the Titanic. And it had the people who lived in straight lettering and those who perished in italics. And she said to everyone in the group, about 30 of us, when you came in, you were given a passenger ticket. Open it up to see which character were on the Titanic. And go on the wall and see if you can find the character.
No.
And I opened up my ticket, and it said Mr. Charles V. Clarke.
No. Spooky. Are you the reincarnation of him?
I have a lot of theories about that. I do actually believe maybe I was on the Titanic. Strange.
Whoa.
I know. So I showed it to my mom, and she almost fell on the ground. She was like, wait, that's the guy you played. I said, yeah, that's the guy I played. And then I started going around to everybody in the group being like, did everybody get the same ticket? Like, is this just
You're all Clarke.
We all got Charles Clarke today?
Right.
Yeah. And I told the girl who was the tour guide, and she was like, oh my God, are you serious? I was like, yes. And she was like,
Yeah.
Like,
no, she said, no, here's what she said. She said, yeah, everybody claims they were in the show. Okay.
Yeah. I was like, do you want me to call the director of the show? No.
That is spooky.
I ended up calling the conductor of the show, a guy named Kevin Stites, who was a massive Titanic file. And I told him the story, and he wigged. He absolutely wigged. And he said, do you mind if I tell Maury? Maury Yeston is the composer of Titanic. Super great guy. And anybody who would write an entire musical about Titanic has to be quite the obsessive historian of it. I get back to New York, and about 4 days later, I'm sitting in my living room, and the phone rings, the old-timey phone that we still had an answering machine. Nobody ever answered the phone. So the phone picks up. The machine starts talking and says, hey, Matt, this is Maury Yeston. Kevin Stites told me the story. And I leap across the room, grab the phone, and get on the phone with Maury Yeston. And he says, tell me this story. And I told him the whole story. And he said, do you mind if I tell that when I go around and do symposiums with people about the people who were in Titanic that I know and the stories that they told? And I was like, by all means. So I was going through a bunch of memorabilia the other day, and we're doing all these reunions with all of our shows and casts that we've done work with. And I thought about that, and I was like, oh, I have to tell that story. It was just the creepiest thing ever. And I still have a ticket. Good time.
So maybe he reached out in the afterlife and switched the names around so you'd get it because he was so happy with how you played his character.
I was very reverential. I really was. I mean, in every show, everybody screws around. But anytime we got to the place in the show, which was called High Tilt, which was when the ship started to sink, and we actually did do that on stage.
Wow.
Everybody, it was amazing how everybody just, you didn't mess with that moment in the show. You did not mess with the moment in the show where you were portraying a real person who died in some of the worst possible ways that human beings can die. And it was amazing. If you let yourself emotionally get into doing that show every night, it was pretty heavy. But,
well, that's why some of us are actors and some of us are not.
Good times.
Yeah. That is an amazing story. That lives up to the Stocke stories. That's awesome. I love it.
I don't know who Alice and Melanie are, but they seem very interested.
They love our show. I mean, let's just talk about them for a second. They love our show. So
we do.
We love them. We love them. So hey, all right. So next up is kind of your time, and we call this your time to talk to your tribe. And I know that you've kind of had a rough week. I'm going to set you up here. You've had a rough week. There were some things that happened. You told me in rehearsal, and we're clearly living in two different worlds. I mean, and that's kind of where this all starts, is that a lot of folks in your tribe are seeing the world move forward, and yet your folks in your tribe are not seeing that. So
it's
talk to them, Stocke. Talk to them.
It's coincidence. Yeah. So Dave and I talked last week after the show about what has naturally evolved with the podcast and with the show, is that what has become very clear is that 6 or 7 weeks ago, South Carolina and New York were in similar places. We were all on lockdown. We were all quarantining, all those things. And over the last 6 or 7 weeks, New York City is going to be last. New York City is going to be last in the country, bar none. We have 40% of the deaths. And so what has happened is I've seen, very fortunately, David get back into business, into a lot of aspects of life that we're not even seeing the line yet. And it brought up that in talking a lot about entrepreneurship, which is the cornerstone of our podcast, the frustration for those of us in New York is that we can have all the ideas we want to right now, but there's not a whole lot we can act on. So especially the things that I do, which I'm an actor, I'm a photographer, and I'm a corporate trainer. And all those things, first and foremost, require other people. There are things you can do virtually, for sure. But in their essence, they're interpersonal businesses. And what has happened here in New York is that things have started to open. The last 10 days to 14 days in New York, it's starting to feel like New York again. It's hot and muggy here today, and people are acting like assholes. So it's New York all over. It's great. It really is. It's like summer. It's summer in the city, and it was like it just happened like that. All of a sudden, it's June-ish, and it's just muggy today, and people are just being pricks, and there's traffic, and I'm like, my city is back.
It's so much better.
Yay. I did. I just got honked at, like crossing over 9th Avenue. I'm like, are you serious? Where are you going? There's no traffic. Anyway, so I think that there are going to be, when it comes to how we speak of our ideas, and certainly the idea of pivoting, we are moving in mud here, and it's going to be muddy for quite some time. Coincidentally enough, today our governor announced that the city was going to start to reopen. The state has been reopening. The city is going to start to reopen phase 1 on June 8th. And that's earlier than what they had predicted. And people are excited about it. And basically his overwhelming advice is, we have the capability to do this. The numbers are showing us we can do this. But if you kids don't follow the rules, you're going right back inside, and it's really true. And it's all about personal responsibility. And this week has been an utter shit show. I mean, the country is bonkers, and the stories are mind-numbing and just abominable, and I always have to remind myself that 99.9% of people don't want to be dicks, that we just want to have a good meal and be with friends, believe what we believe, but don't be dicks about it. That's most of us, and that very small, minute percentage of people who do want to be dicks get all the press. And
somehow they generate the most noise. I never understoed that.
They do, because I'm not going to go on a rant about any kind of
yeah. But you're right. I'm just supporting what you're saying.
Yeah, and the bad news sells. Pricks sell. It's like, it's why I love things like John Krasinski's like Some Good News. It's amazing. It's just like 30 minutes of just like, that's an amazing story. I sit there and cry. But that's not how the money goes. So they have to focus on the pricks, and there were a lot of pricks this week, and it was just insane. And it's I got caught up in it a couple of times this week, and I was embarrassed by getting sucked into things I didn't want to on social media. I lashed out at somebody who was a friend for absolutely no reason at all, and ended up apologizing, and she was very understanding. But afterwards I just said, I've been so good about not doing it that I just got sucked in. And I said to Dave the other day that Facebook needs to have one of those like 3 a.m. don't text your ex-girlfriend buttons on it, where it can read your posts and go,
yeah, it's probably not a good idea. You've had a little too much wine tonight. Are you sure you want to post this?
Go walk around the block, come back, and see if you want to post this.
Yeah, right.
So it's the emotions are heightened around the country for many, many, many reasons, and around the world. And our people keep getting bad news, about how theater, specifically television and motion pictures, are going to start working again. in talking with your cousin Patrick Wilson, they're figuring out ways to work, and they're going to get back to work in a much easier fashion than live theater or any other kind of live production. It's going to be a slow boring of boards for us. And when you see other things getting going, it doubles it. It sort of weighs on us.
Yeah.
And so my thing moving forward to our viewers, and the fact that Dave and I now 6 weeks later are in very different places logistically about what we can do and where we need to pivot, and things that David has done and things that I'm thinking of doing where I'm still basically sitting inside, that we're going to start sort of looking at both of these camps as something that's part of the show, as opposed to just being entrepreneurs, that it's going to be sort of specific to our territories, so that I will have questions about what's going on in Dave's world and vice versa, and that we can sort of speak to our specific tribes on any given show and also get input. That's kind of what we're leading to.
Yeah.
Is that, reaching out to people in between podcasts and saying, what is it that you want to discuss? What is it that you want to address? Not saying that me or Dave have the answers, but something to start a dialogue instead of doing things like going on Facebook and yelling at people. It does no good. I even wrote a whole post about it. Like, where is the merit in going and getting angry on Facebook? And then I fucking did it. Like, within a day, I did it.
We're subject to that. We are subject to our own advice all the time. And there were many, and I'll give a shout out to our co-host who will continue to be on the show with us, Jessica Michaels. She gave us a great saying, be above the battlefield. And as entrepreneurs, we have a deficiency. It is truly built into our DNA that we think we can solve every problem if you just give us enough time. Bring me your problem and I will solve it, right? And so we dive into that so often. I can't tell you the number of times I have deleted Facebook posts because it's like, nope. I just can't do it. And then you slip up and then you just nail it, and it's like, I wish I hadn't done that. So I did something the other day. I put a post out and it was kind of late. Yes, I'd had a few glasses of wine. I was feeling the language. My post was so written. So it was like, oh my God, you're a disgusting English major writing this shit. I mean, who uses this vocabulary? All right. And I gave it to Michelle and said, here, read this. And she read it and I said, what do you think? She's like, okay, take that part out because it's a public post and you need to think about these kinds of things, and that language you don't need to use in your post. I was like, great, perfect. So I took it out and I posted it. So, I mean, it's the classic impulse versus intuition. And we succumb to our impulses to just lash out at people that we just feel that it feels good sometimes.
Yeah.
It feels good. After we do it, it feels good.
Yeah.
And then you think about it, like, oh, that doesn't feel so good.
Yeah. Well, and that was how I felt. I mean, I felt more embarrassed afterwards, not because it was a matter of practicing what I preach, which I didn't, but that the person who I sort of lashed out immediately at was someone who was simply just looking out for my best interest. The long and short of the story was I put up a thing on Facebook the other night because I want to get out of town. And we're allowed to get out of town. And a lot of people are doing it, I'm not running from New York. I've been here during this whole thing and I'm glad I was. But it's also the summer in New York and it gets pretty gross here. And also I've been in Manhattan for 10 weeks now. And that's a long time. Usually I try to just get out, go to Patrick's, go out to New Jersey, do something. But I've been in Midtown now for 2.5 months, and I just want to go take a little visit somewhere. The usual places to visit are usually friends, and right now there's too much tenuous situation going on to be like, yeah, come stay with me and my family. I wouldn't invite me, even though I've had the virus, even though I've gotten rid of it. I wouldn't invite, the guy from New York, yeah, don't come out here just yet. Don't. Right. I don't blame him.
Right.
So I put a thing up, and I got a lot of responses, and actually just found out today that one of my friends in Pennsylvania was like, I'm going to be out of my house for 2 weeks in the middle of June. Come out and water my plants, and you can stay. There's a lake right next door. We got a pool and a bunch of bikes. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
fantastic. So going to do that. But one of a friend of mine who was a casting director, former casting director, very sweet woman, she simply wrote, good for you, Matt, but don't get ahead of yourself. Be sure to stay safe. We don't know what the actual situation is yet, with this. And for whatever reason, I was just like, just the things, don't get ahead of yourself. I was like, what makes you think you know more than I do? Just like,
yeah.
I was just like, you're indicating that I don't, that I'm not, I just went, you don't know more than I.
It's so interesting how little sayings like that, little things. I experience the exact same thing often with folks, company wise or anywhere. I mean, sometimes those little snippets, it's just like they didn't mean it. She didn't mean it. She wasn't trying to dig at you, but something in your brain is like, yeah, you just short circuit and then you react.
She said, take care. Like, be safe, take care. I hope you're doing well.
Being nice.
Like, honestly, and my first reaction was I didn't even think about it. I wrote back and I said, how am I getting help? How am I getting ahead of myself again?
Yeah.
Just like, yeah. It was so fucking passive aggressive. And I was just like, I sent it, and then she was just like, "Oh my God, why the hostility?" And I was just like, "Because you're not more right than I am."
Alice brings up relax and calm down. Yes, I'll tell you. I'll give you a stringer story on relax, calm down, and really. So I guess this segment has really turned into those trigger words that we have to really work on and know your audience, right? So I was in a heated argument with a. I don't even know how to describe it, but it was an owner. He was an owner of Insignia at one time. And he was an accountant, and he's very straightforward. And he's also in his position. And I was subordinate to his position. And he was laying into me about something that he didn't quite understand totally. And he didn't have all the information, but he just decided to lay into me big time. And I was like, blank person, relax. Let me talk. Oh, and he exploded. It was like I took a bucket of gasoline and just went poof, and just exploded, right? Yeah. So yes, it trigger words and those things that just set us off. And Mel's got a great thing in here. She says, give ourselves grace. And that's where you have to go and just hold it in for a second and then think about it.
Well, and last week I came to this kind of lovely realization about empathy, where I really want to start first and foremost looking at exactly what Melanie said too about the battlefield. The battlefield is messy on all sides, not just on one. And that's a great point. That I had gotten to this point last week where I was like, I need to put myself in the shoes of the people that I don't agree with, the people who are handling this whole situation differently than I am, and also handling basically everything that's going on in our country differently than I am. People are hurting all over. People are hurting even if their people that they like are the ones calling the shots. They're still hurting. There's a lot of people on all of that. So that looking at empathy, which is literally just put yourself in somebody else's shoes, as opposed to sympathy, because you can, I confuse the two. But looking at it with empathy allows you to do that. It allows you to say that it's not two different battlefields. It's stay above the battlefield. And if you look next to you and see somebody who you don't agree with, but they're trying to keep themselves above the battlefield too, then they're doing the same thing. And it reminds me just that there are, so many people who simply just want the best for things and do not have sinister intentions. So that right now, where we are, especially in New York, where we are usually out in front of everything. You know, New York is like, we're putting the foot on the gas all the time. There's a tempo and a bloodline in this city that is unlike any other place. You've been here enough. Like there's a pulse to this city that always leads the way. Always leads the way. It's why New York is the biggest and the best and the worst of everything, because it's just that, it's that pulse. And right now that pulse is just, and so you have all these people, we're like tigers in cages, just like, let us back out to do something. Let's back out to create. That's what we do. We create. And we're not allowed yet. So what do? You lash out at somebody who says, I hope you're doing well. You know, it's just like, it was like, I felt embarrassed about it. I sent her a private message later in the day, and I said, I'm so embarrassed by my hostility at that and my passive aggressiveness, which I just disdain about myself, that I said, you didn't deserve that. You were being kind. And she said, you know, basically what Melanie said, you know, give yourself some grace. I didn't take it that personally. I was just wondering why you reacted in such a harsh way to me saying, you know, don't get ahead of yourself. It was just the verbiage that set me off. It was just, you know, you indicating that you know more than I do. And I was like, you know, and it was so childish. And the good thing was, it was a great learning experience with somebody who's very understanding. I didn't do it to a family member, a loved one, you know, like, and really start pushing buttons and ostracize somebody. But it was good to have happen, because it just pointed out to me, go back, always think on empathy, always think on, you know, the old Will Rogers thing, you know, go stand behind a man and look at what he sees, and you'll have a whole different perspective on life. And so it's been a tough week on that level, especially with everything that's going on in other places in the country. It's an emotional tennis that, you know, sometimes the ups are really great, you know, and then the last couple of days has been like the depths of depravity in very small amounts of people, you know, and that right now, when there's nothing to do about it right now, is the problem. Usually, especially as artists, the way we enter the world is to sort of look at whatever that strife is and fucking paint the shit out of it and celebrate something about it. Yeah. You know, you find out that all of a sudden that, you know, that we can't have Broadway Bears, which is this huge fundraiser every year in June, that basically got canceled, and they're going to do it virtually. And it's those kind of things that go, oh, those are the nights in the year that lift everybody in this community. They lift them up. And to find out that, once again, those things are being sort of taken away bit by bit. At the same time, things are opening. And you're just like, well, which one is it?
Right.
So it's just, now that things are, it's not just the light at the end of the tunnel. The tunnel's open now. And it's about how we approach it. But nobody really knows. Like it's, you know, we're learning day by day. So it's very tenuous. And thank you, Mel. Give yourself grace is an amazing thing to think about. I really love that.
Shout out to
Grace Stringer.
Huh?
Grace Stringer.
What? Grace? Is Grace on here? What?
No, I just the name Grace came out.
Oh, okay. I was gonna say, my daughter actually graced us with the. That's another whole story, which I won't go into. But anyway, we're not good enough for my middle child quite yet. So, but I want to give a shout out to Brian Smithson for a hilarious post in our chat for the Fix It Dude. And I have to say, that's another story we'll tell another time. But so Fix It Dude, yes, that came from you. Remember, that came from your dream. So that's hilarious. And yeah, once more with clarity. I remember he said that to me one time in the office, and my head just about blew off. Right?
Once more with clarity.
He says he would say that to. What's funny about this is he would say that to his wife, and then one day in the office, and we would laugh about it. And then one day he came in, and I was trying to explain something, and I was not explaining well. Let's just say I was not explaining well. Brian Smith is one of the most intelligent human beings I've ever met. So if he doesn't get it, then clearly it's the problem of the person trying to explain it to him. And so I'm explaining something to him and he says, okay, I'm going to do it to you once more with clarity. And it was just like,
oh, I'm going to steal that. I love that.
No, anyway. All right.
I'm going to steal that shit. That's fun.
Oh, that's awesome. What a great line, right? Totally. If you want to make, well, it doesn't matter. Great line. Use it with caution.
Well, it's also for those of us who have made a living doing musical theater. Every 10 seconds, your musical director is saying, "Once more with feeling. Once more with accelerando con molto." And it's just like, yeah, good. Once more with clarity.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, ow.
It's awesome. So we have our first. I thought we had our first. So what I've been doing here is kind of going back and forth. I think we had our first comment on YouTube, and I think we have someone from Japan watching. All right, cool. I don't know. Maybe it's a spammer. I don't know. Getting excited about people from Japan. So anyway, perfect segue into our next segment of the show, which is, so we had focus group and to focus group. So we wanted to ask our audience tonight, we would like to progress our podcast forward. As you could tell at the beginning of our podcast, production-wise, it is an absolute train wreck. And until we're on, right? And I guess we're okay once we get on the show, but the intro is weird and you're always kind of, anyway, it's just strange. So we'd like to take our production value up a notch. We'd like to move this to a format where we can potentially monetize our podcast. Why else are we doing this? So will you move with us to YouTube? And that's the question. So we want to hear your feedback from the standpoint that here's how we are conceiving of the show that would go forward. We would pre-record our episodes. We would provide a little bit better production value to those. Maybe not. Maybe it's just a train wreck and that's kind of fun. And then we would drop those pre-records on, let's say, a Monday. And they would be dropped on our Podbean. So then it goes out to Apple, which we've figured that out. So we're out on the Apple podcast. We're out on Spotify. We're out on Google. And now our feed is starting to get picked up in other places. So it would be an audio podcast, of course. And then at the same time, our video would drop on YouTube and you could watch the episode that would be very similar to this, but it wouldn't have the live comments. We have some desires to bring on some guests who can't always be here at 5:30. And I was one of those people. I was rushing to get here to be here by 5:30 on Friday. And it was kind of a train wreck this afternoon. So the point is what we would do is we'd drop that podcast earlier in the week, like a Monday, maybe a Tuesday. Hopefully you catch the podcast and then say Friday evening at say 6 or maybe later, we have a live session where we talk about the podcast and you can join us and ask us questions and we can go a little bit further than with the guests that we interviewed. And you still get the interaction piece and we're moving the real podcast and video to YouTube and Podbean. So, yes, Alice, I thank you. Alice is one of our biggest fans. My sister Alice, that's not just because I'm her brother. It's because she listens to a lot of podcasts and She has said from the beginning, we're on to something. So thank you, Alice. We really appreciate that. Lining up and against all the other podcasts that you listen to, us kind of being onto something, it's pretty cool. So that's kind of where we are with sort of the focus group. So any other comments in there? Let's see. Downloads of podcast are going to. Yes, Mel. Get the money.
So far, we have two people who said, yes, we will go with you. One is your sister and one is your wife. So we are
two sisters and the wife. Yeah.
No, Melly didn't say she was coming with us. She hasn't said it yet.
She hasn't. Okay.
Alice and Michelle are the only two that said, yes, I'm coming with you.
So with that, we kind of want to understand, what do you like about the show? Being that you might watch this a little bit later after the actual live cast, do you like the guests so far? Have we been able to kind of engage the audience with the guests' participation? What do you not like about the show? I'll tell you what I don't like about the show: the production value at the very beginning, and the fact that I say a lot drives me nuts. So I'm working on that one. But what do you not like about the show? Constructive criticism is always welcome.
Well, somebody named PJ Burton said he would not go with us to.
Really? Well,
I don't know if it's a he or she, but PJ Burton says, no, not going with you, that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's fine. Well, I mean, it's just, hey, it's his loss.
You know anybody named Burton?
I know a lot of people named Burton.
Do you? Interesting.
Yeah, I do.
You're gonna lead us there. There you go.
There you go. That's awful pretentious. Thanks a lot.
Well, I don't see very well, so I'm like, that's fine. That's cool.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
One of the things that you and I talked about with the idea of kind of switching our platforms, or moving just laterally, sort of, is the idea of the interaction between y'all and us, and what, as David mentioned, what you want to hear us talk about, what you want to address. And I think that will also help the two of us, being in different situations as businessmen, as where we are in the country, to say, okay, we had 3 people from within the Tri-County area of David, and 3 people within the Tri-State area of me, who had these 3 questions. And we can have a section of the show where we simply address things that you guys send to us that maybe we haven't thought about in moving forward, certainly in the word that I always come back to about pivoting. We said from the very beginning that why not us? Why is it not us who has the big idea, in any way, shape, or form? And Dave had a big idea yesterday that he might not want to tell everybody about, but I was floored. And was that yesterday? Yes.
Yeah. Which idea? Oh, yeah, that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So, I mean, the things that I didn't know if that was something you wanted to talk about, but I also, I sprung an idea on my agent about a week and a half ago, and it's something that I'm starting. So in the midst of all these things, you start to pivot. And is it okay if I announce this right now about my recording thing?
Yeah.
Good time to do that. If we're talking about how you pivot as you move forward, a thing that's been happening in the theater world over the last 4 or 5 years, maybe more, are things called self-tapes, which are exactly what they sound like. And they're horrible. It's essentially, TV and film have been doing it for years, but it's essentially when a casting director says, hey, so-and-so wants to see you for a role. They can't be in the same city as you. Will you put yourself on tape? It's dreadful. You have to find somebody to play the piano for you, somebody to read the scenes with you. If you can't do that, you start making up ways, like there's a track you listen to on your computer, but you sing to it. The sound is always crappy. Oftentimes the video is simply just your phone. You send them in and you hope against hope that what they see on an iPad will do what is necessary, the same thing being in the room, which is completely different.
Right.
But it's part of what things have become over the last decade. Well, where we are now is that's going to be basically the way people audition for the next 8, 10, 12 months.
Yeah.
And it's okay. As long as the casting directors know it, the directors know it, the actors know it, we got to figure out ways to do it. So about 2 weeks ago, I started putting this plan into order, that I want to offer to my fellow actors in the New York area the ability to come to my studio, wherein I have all of my professional photography equipment, including cameras, including microphones, which is the biggest thing that separates good audition tapes from bad audition tapes. I mean, your iPhone shoots insane high def video, but the microphones stink, and you need to be able to be heard. So I have professional cameras, professional microphones. I have all my backdrops for all of my photography. I have had the virus and have gotten through the virus. Doesn't necessarily mean that I'm free and clear, but most indications are that I am not a threat. Also, I have the ability to social distance and do recordings. And also, the one thing that I offer, which I say humbly, is that I am a professional actor, and that it might be more beneficial to my fellow actors to come in and read scenes with somebody who's not a casting director or somebody in a big casting house who won't be invested in, say, what the character is that is reading with you, or what the project you're working on is. I think I might have a little bit better insight from the actor's side of it to make people feel comfortable and to do really good quality auditions to make ourselves more marketable, I think would be a great.
This is exactly like if you are new to the job environment. Let's say you're really young, coming out of college, you want to apply for a job. This is exactly like getting your resume reviewed by someone who's professional, right? Because you could drum up something on Word, right? And it could be okay formatted, and it could be okay written, and you send that in, and the person that gets it goes, oh, isn't that nice? You know, they're just right out of college, and I guess they didn't have the resources to really do a very good resume. Or you get on a template, you fill it out, and you fill out the template the best you can, and then you send that in. Oh, they did a good job. So now it's a little bit better. They did a better job. This resume did a better job. At least they used a nice template and it looks nice. And then you crush it with your service, which is, holy cow, look at this person that took the time to go through this process, put the effort into this. And I would assume that you could use this more than one time, right? I mean, maybe help me out understanding this. Could I, if I did this once with you and somebody else said, hey, I would like for you to audition for this part, totally different, could I send them that same content, or do I have to do this over and over and over again?
It depends. It depends. It'll be, I mean, people do very short reels. A reel in the television and film industry is, you know, a 2-minute video of all the stuff you've done on TV and films. And it's like 10-second, 20-second things. And it's your reel. It's just to see what you look like.
Right.
In theater, we don't necessarily do that, but you can have something that you send out that's more generic, just to say, here's snippets of 2 songs that I sing, and here's a couple of monologues just to see what I look like and what I sound like. Most projects are so specific where they want to see you read these
script for that character. Okay, that makes sense.
And we do it all the time. But setting up this process by which I have all the equipment already. I also live in Midtown, which as things start to open up is going to be where people sort of congregate anyway. To come into Midtown to do anything in the city. I'm 2 blocks from every subway. That it's convenient. It's about as I will make it as safe a space as possible, and really just in a very sort of esoteric, sort of Buddhist way, it's about putting good energy into the world. It's one of the things I love most about shooting headshots, is the feeling when a client leaves my studio and you hug it out and just say, that was really awesome. Like, we just had 2.5 hours of just awesome, and we made really beautiful pictures of your face, and now we feel good. Work is done. I think right now what we need as much as anything is to start feeling those kinds of things again. Nice. And even as things are slowly coming out, and just maybe here's a project here and there, you're doing something online, just doing things to move forward. And just say, you got some sides, you got a song you want to work on, come over, we're going to put you on tape. And when you're done, I'm going to send you a digital file of you doing the best version of that material that we can do right now. Whether it leads to anything this moment, we don't know. Because we don't know what projects are going to get greenlit and then get shut back down or whatever. It's just going to be about, we're out from under the rug, you know, and we're creating again and moving forward in some way again. You know, to do what we can. And as you and I have talked about from the beginning, the whole idea of pivoting, you have to keep moving forward. We're still moving forward. You just have to.
Yeah, I love this idea. I love this idea for a couple of reasons. One is you're providing services that is needed right now.
Yes.
You're providing services that other people potentially can't get on their own, right? If they had all that equipment, they would just do it themselves. But there's a lot of people that don't, and they haven't made the investment in the professional cameras. They haven't made the investment in the professional lighting, the sound, all that stuff. So you're providing a value add in this moment in time, and it's awesome. I mean,
and I should
hear about your first.
For right now, I'm doing it. I'm not asking for anything. I'm not asking to be paid. Like for right now, I know that's crazy. I know. Look at your entrepreneur head went, are you out here?
Okay, I'm taking him off the podcast right now. He's got to go. He's got to go. This is ridiculous.
The whole thing is about making money, you dummy.
No, it's not all about making money. I don't want that perception to be out there that David Stringer is all about making money. I will tell
you why I'm doing this right now is because everybody's hurting financially.
By the way, Jessica Michaels, get in here. I just sent you the link. I know. She just commented.
Just sitting there.
So she's watching. So get in here, meaning the studio. Get in here. We can put you on screen. Anyway, go ahead.
For the time being, I think it's a decent thing to do just to drum up some forward momentum in a good juju kind of way. 2, to make sure as I move forward right now and am learning exactly what is going to be the industry standard, that I want to get better at my work before it turns into, it's like when I first started my photography business, I had a whole bunch of people come over and I just took their headshots just to see if I was good at it. Now I know how to use a camera, I know how to use lights, and I know how to use a microphone. I get it. And I know how to be a reader for people who are performing this stuff. But right now it's a little bit different. People who want to have social distance, you're not going to come in, we're not going to give each other a hug. There's going to be a feeling out process for people coming into my apartment, which is my studio in Midtown, just coming back very tentatively back into life. So for right now, it's about a feeling out. And let's say, you need to just start getting used to it. We need to start getting used to putting ourselves on tape. And that's all the auditions we do. We don't go to the studios right now and sing our songs and do our scenes and our sides and then walk out the door and go back out, 12 floors down and out into Midtown. We don't do it that way. So for right now, for the foreseeable future, for the next couple of months, I just want to provide the opportunity for us to do this and get better at it ourselves. And then when things do start to open up, then I'll start charging the shit out of people.
Look at the quality that I'm doing. And it's all about the value and the quality. I mean, your clients in that particular space are going to have such good content that's going to set them apart, that's going to, and it matters. I mean, I think I want to work with, as a business owner, right? I'm going to put myself in as a producer, right? But as a business owner, it's kind of the same thing. If I get a resume, I mean, I'll tell you, we've gotten some things from folks that just blow us away. I mean, a great example. Our vice president of sales. Ah, wait, time out.
We have her?
She's here.
Oh my God.
Hi, you guys. I am so tired, and I have like no makeup left. I have no brain cells left. I have like.
Yeah. So Jessica Michaels texted me or sent a group message this morning. It was like, hey, I've got a great idea for the show. Here's what it is, blah, blah, blah. Let's bring this person on. It was like 7:30 in the morning. By the time I was sort of done with I was going into the office, my morning routine, I saw this and I was like, hey, we have an idea for the show. Let's jump on a quick call. A group message this morning. It was like, hey, I've got a great idea for the show. Here's what it is, blah, blah, blah. Let's bring this person on. Stop it. I don't like to hear myself.
I don't either.
Jessica Michaels said she didn't like to hear me. That's what she just said.
No. I don't like to hear myself. I don't like to hear myself.
So I said, hey, let's jump on a quick call because I have an idea we have an idea for the show. We want to get your take on it. And she says, I am booked from here to here. No thanks. No thanks. So thank you for joining us today.
I'm honored that
Somebody is still playing me. Shut up.
I think it's Stocke.
No, I'm not. There's nothing on.
Oh, no.
All right. You sure there's no tab open somewhere?
Matt, I so want your shirt.
Awesome.
I love it.
What do you guys think of the show?
Well, I was right in the middle of a story and then I forgot about it. What was I?
You were talking about the idea that I had that I messaged you, and
yeah, but before I saw that you
were here. Oh, sorry.
In the studio. No, it's fine. It's fine. I'm glad you're here. Yeah. So, Jess, you're good with this idea of pre-record. Oh, and Mel, I wanted to catch up with something that Mel said a little bit while ago. She said you could always record during the lives and then release. The problem, Mel, is that if we're doing a live and we want studio audience or we want audience, VP of sales. Yes, thanks. I'll get back to that in a second. If we want that, we have to set a specific time. And what we're discovering is, just as we're seeing, sort of the audience participation and who's here, 5:30 on Friday is not what it was, 4 weeks ago when we were all, I was working from home and I hadn't left the house in 3 weeks. So getting that live time is going to be harder and harder. And we have folks that we'd like to bring on as guests that ultimately are going to be very difficult to bring on because they may not be available at 5:30. So that was sort of the point of doing pre-recorded shows so we could go get people that otherwise, like Jess, who couldn't be here at 5:30 because she's working, she's putting it down, she's getting it done. And
hanging with the kids.
So I was, someone reminded me, the VP of sales. Yes, I was talking about our VP of sales got a resume off of Indeed from a 16-year-old high school student who absolutely blew us away with her resume and her cover letter and her overall enthusiasm to desire to work for our company. And it was like, if you were, we couldn't throw a 16-year-old into, telemarketing, right? And we can't throw a 16-year-old into doing marketing stuff and all that stuff. Got to get a little older, a little bit more experience. But my goodness. So I'm thinking of those videos that you're going to be able to do, Matt, in this new service. And hopefully those are well received by those casting directors and producers and directors, because that's awesome.
Another one of the advantages that I have just being old and being around this business for 25 years is that I basically know all of the casting directors, and I'm going to reach out to them, especially those of them who are very good friends of mine, and say, I want to do this the way you want them to look. I want to make sure I don't need to put my stamp on how to do audition tapes. I don't care. I want to do it as good as possible to what the industry standard is going to be for the time being. Let me know what kind of format. Let me know what it needs to sound like. Let me know if you need a long shot. Whatever you need, I can do it all. I have the equipment and the capability, and have been taking pictures of people for 25 years. But to do it the way they want it, instead of putting like, this is my vision. No, I don't need a vision. I need to put it into what the context is right now of what these casting people are going to need to give all of us as performers a better chance of them going, oh, this is really a great tape. This really represents you very well moving forward, as long as we're doing it that way. Let's do that.
I freaking love it. I am so proud of you.
It's a great idea because it solves a problem. And that's the difference between being an entrepreneur and just being an artist, where you said, I want to serve my clients, which are inevitably going to be casting directors, not just the actors, right? That's the ultimate client. So you're really catering. You're saying, this is what these people need, so I'm willing to work with whatever they need. I just think it's brilliant. I'm so happy for you. I'm so excited for you.
Well, and it's also about what we can do right now. There's not much we can do right now. So in thinking from the beginning of what Dave and I were talking about with this podcast, is about that idea of pivoting right now. You can't keep going straight forward right now. You can't. Yeah. So what's the idea that's just going to go like that? And I'm not saying that I have the answer to how we're going to reopen Broadway theater. I mean, the ideas are just starting to come out now, and there's no real good ones.
I had one.
You know, you what?
I had one.
You had one?
Yeah, didn't you see it in the Facebook message? That was the message.
Yeah, this morning's message.
And next week's episode.
Right.
Never mind. We'll talk about it later.
Okay.
We'll just tease them a little, you know.
Okay.
Go to your messenger.
But I do want to. I want to read something, and I didn't know she was going to be on the show, but I was going to read this anyway. This is something that Jessica Michaels.
Jessica No Brain Cells Michaels.
Jessica Michaels wrote yesterday, and it's incredibly spot on. And I hope to start to try to instill this into a lot of people in my business right now who are very frustrated and very thank you, Valerie. Jesus. She's coming on the show. Man, okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Val. Jessica said this to me yesterday, and I think it's a good thing for me to try to remind myself, and as Dave calls it, my tribe, to remember that Broadway is not a group of buildings. And this is a little ethereal, but I friggin' love it. And she said, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe a helpful perspective flip is that Broadway is not a building or a location. It's the highest, almost unattainable quality of performance artistry and expertise. It's a badge of honor. That flip changes everything. You are Broadway. Everyone you've worked with is Broadway. It is a living, breathing collective that doesn't end at a concrete wall or some theater chairs. Just my 2 cents.
Nice.
Mic drop. See you next week, everybody. Take care.
It's true. It's so true. And where my brain went, my nerdy, dorky brain went too, when I was thinking that, I was like, okay, how do we get equity to change how they label? So you do one to two Broadway shows, that's one level of payment. But once you get to 3 Broadway shows and up, that should be a premium price. A premium price to have that level performer. And it should be literally a badge on your equity card that says, boom, you are at 3. You are now a Broadway veteran. You should be paid this amount, because the reality is, if that had started, Matt, when you had gotten to your 3rd Broadway show years ago, how different would life be for you going through any of this right now? So contracts were negotiated by equity for the particular house and production, and they shouldn't be negotiated that way. Contracts should be negotiated based on, well, a combination of the people you're hiring.
Agreed.
That's one of the things that needs to change going forward. So we learn all these different ways of way things aren't working. Come on, Broadway performers should be treated the same way professional athletes are treated. You cannot tell me that Broadway seats are not often sold out. I mean, look at Hamilton. Why aren't Hamilton performers paid like Michael Jordan?
True.
Well, okay.
What has to change? And what has to change for that to happen is actually the other question to answer, right?
There you go.
So it's not happening.
Sure.
What has to change?
And this goes right to Mel's point that she just posted, and I think it's the same thing. Now, you can educate me. Michael Jordan pulled in millions and millions and millions of dollars of revenue for the Chicago Bulls and anybody else, Nike and anybody else he touched. Is it the same, right? Is a baseball team, a professional baseball team or basketball team, are they going to generate the same amount of revenue that a Broadway show would generate without driving up prices?
So this is the other thing that I want to say. If you're a Broadway performer, I'm talking, when I say there's Broadway Light and Broadway Premiere. Broadway Premiere is level like 3 and more. Matt, when you go to a commercial audition, you're paid on a contract that's based on that job. They don't look at your card and go, oh, he's a Broadway premiere artist. He should get this level. And I'm not saying, Alice, I'm not saying I have the answer. This is a conversation, but I think that looking at pricing and looking at how pricing is done, that's how things get solved. It's not, I don't think I've magically, woohoo, genius is falling out of my mouth right now. I'm not saying that. I'm saying there have to be different ways. It is a shame that at every show there's like this cap, and there shouldn't be. In my opinion, there shouldn't be.
And I think it's a valid opinion. I think it's an argument, especially with Valerie, who works for our union. Listening, if you know anything about Val, she will be open to any idea and have conversations about it because she's a brilliant person. The comparison to somebody like Michael Jordan led to two things. Michael Jordan led to victories, unequivocally led to victories. His points caused victories. Victories led to revenues. Revenues led to merchandise, and you could pay people more money. There's, in my opinion, there's too much subjectivity. What I'm trying to say is, if Michael Jordan has won 7 or 8 championships, that's unequivocal. If somebody's done 7 or 8 Broadway shows, it's not always a representation of what they bring to that Broadway show. Not always. I know hundreds of people who are insanely talented who have never been on Broadway.
True.
I know hundreds of people who have been in 20 Broadway shows that I go, what? So there's a bit too much of that. Whether or not you love Bryce Harper is a fantastic baseball player who leads to victories for his team, and that is quantifiable. There's nothing really quantifiable about what I bring. I've done 7 Broadway shows, but you could look at somebody who's done none Broadway shows, and they might say he brings just as much to the table as Matt Stocke does. And who's to say that he doesn't? That's the only thing. If you're starting to monetize things and say that I deserve more because I have on my card that I've done 7 Broadway shows, I love that idea. The idea of selling that to a producer would be very, very difficult.
So there's two things happening here that someone put, the professional sports team are corporately sponsored as well. And then Valerie, you put something in about.
Wait, what's your point with that? Are you saying that why not how about corporate sponsors sponsor Broadway shows? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. And Valerie said, because we don't sell merchandise nationwide. Well, why not?
Right. So is it time, so being the moderator here, is it time for this business model of Broadway to maybe reinvent itself? I think maybe that's what you're talking about. At the heart of it.
Yes.
Because it has to, you can't just start with the actors and say, well, let's pay them differently. Because there's a ripple effect all the way up through the entire organization or industry, if you will, of that structure. You have to kind of start. But
that's just where I started the conversation.
Yeah. No, I get it.
That's just a boom. What about this? That's it. and laying it out here for all of you to pick apart.
What was it that Sanderson said? Why not and what if?
Why not and what if? Like,
why not?
All I'm saying is that if this is happening over here in sports, how can we use that model? Like, is there a way to use that model? And I'm specifically talking about Broadway. I'm not saying other people are not as talented, Matt.
Sure.
I'm saying that Broadway should be a level of, and not should, as an idea. I'm saying should as an idea, Broadway could maybe be considered a certain level of achievement, like an Ivy League level of achievement.
And I believe it is to a certain extent. I do. I believe that.
But where it doesn't show up, does it show up in your paycheck after a certain?
No. I mean, it's the difference between that and like the movie and television industry that have all the money because they can advertise. that, you acquire what's called your quote, which is what you get paid. Basically, the minimum you get paid. It keeps going up and up and up and up and up and up the more you work. It doesn't work like that on Broadway, and I don't foresee a situation where it could, because there is such a divide between the League of Producers. This is a whole other show, but the League of Producers and our representation, and the amount of work and effort that our representation, the people on Equity Council, put into. And this is another thing. I went off on somebody yesterday about this, about anybody who complains about my union and yet has never been to a council meeting, worked on a committee. I want to kill people by their faces and beat them against sidewalks and things. I get embarrassed.
Settle down over there.
But I think these are the point being, I think these are all incredible ideas, and these are things that when we do like the pivot towards My Tribe show, that Jessica also being part of My Tribe and part of the Dave Tribe in both ways, we can start these kinds of very important and informed discussions. Maybe not informative because we don't know the answers, but informed enough to discuss. I think they're great things to talk about. And
it shoots for someone at a level, let's say, okay, I'm totally making this up, right? Because I'm not in your industry, so I'm making this up as I go. So my point is that let's say that in order for change to happen, in order for us to really get into a substantive conversation of why not and what if, we go after someone at that other side of the table, if you will, that producer side of the table, or the business, the Broadway owner side of the table. I don't know who that would be, and bring them on the show. And then hopefully they're a willing participant in that kind of a session of why not and what if. I'm totally stealing Sanderson stuff. That's what other entrepreneurs do, is we steal each other's shit and we just keep going.
Valerie Laukilai, did you hear what he just said? He was talking to you.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's do that.
So this is the other thing, right? Part of what I love about the whole let's science the shit out of everything of this, is that's all we're doing, right? We're just figuring out, like Edison did with a light bulb, 10,000 ways not to do it, so that we can come up with a way of how to do it. So that's why I love, somebody wrote, Broadway chorus members make more than I do as a core member of a ballet company with decades of experience. The difference is the ballet, I'm a dancer, so, ballet doesn't claim the audiences that Broadway does. It doesn't. That's unfortunate and wrong, but it doesn't. So again, let's figure out all the 10,000 different ways that this doesn't work, so we can figure out the way that it does. And so that nobody's going back to things the way they were, but this creates a level of innovation and change that makes a difference.
And that's all I got. And that's happening right now. And Val would be the perfect person. Yes, Val, you don't give me this me with a question mark. Stop that. She would be the perfect person to talk to about this, because she has.
I think she's next, right? To come on the show, right?
Well, she doesn't know that, but she's gonna.
We're working on our list for June. So that's So that is kind of an important announcement of the show, is we are gonna take next week off. All right. And what that means is we are retooling the show. So Jessica, this was what I was going to talk to you about this morning, but we're going to retool the show in the next 2 weeks. And so our next live is going to be June. Oh, dang it. I hate math. June 12th. So the next live that we're going to come on, and it's going to be the recap of what we drop in that week. So the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. So we're going to drop an episode on the 8th. And what we're also going to do is talk about the other guests that we're going to have on through June. Hopefully we're going to book all those. We have one guest confirmed. And we're going to be coming back on June 12th for our live recap. And then we get to cross our fingers and see what happens on YouTube. I mean, hopefully what happens is you all will join us on this journey and help us make this crossover, make this podcast what it could be, bring people on with good conversation, constructive conversation. This has been one of the best sort of back and forths that we've had live. So I'm hoping that we can somehow transition that into the new format as well. So pretty cool. I'm excited. I'm excited.
This was I think the changing of the vibe kind of in the country, and certainly, like I said, we got the news today from our governor that things are going to be reopening June 8th, as long as we are good kids, and it does immediately changes your mindset. A lot of people on Facebook today were just mentioning, just like, now there's a date. Now there's like a thing that just says, we're going to start prying open the bars. It's going to start happening, so that's a huge thing moving forward. And it helped at the end of this week with so much strife in other places to kind of go, okay, well, now let's put on our big boy pants and let's get moving. Let's, as opposed to just kind of treading water. Let's go. I'm not going to figure it all out, but let's go. So
yeah,
it's amazing.
All right, friends and neighbors, let's start our Friday. Let's continue our happy hour. We really appreciate you. We'll be back on a live June 12th. We will post our newest episode June 8th, and toilet paper fortune cookie out when I hit the right button.
Bye. Have a good weekend.
Bye.